Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Janine here, and I am going to use a multitude of things. I have Lawn Fawn Happy Village for a couple of the elements. I then have a Stampin' Up, like a bricked stencil for some inking. I also have a plaid folk art stencil. It's kind of like a plaid-y sort of thing, you'll see in a bit. I have the Rubber Dub Dub Lawn Fawn stamp set, and I'm using a variety of elements from that. I also have the new to Lawn Fawn Scent with Love for a few more elements and the main actors, shall we say, in this romance novel. And then from Crazy Antics Lawn Fawn, I'm using the little blanket. I also have from Mama Elephant's Slim Window Dressing, I have the window elements. So all three of those pieces make up the main window. And then I'm using new to me mini slimline layers from Waffle Flower, and I'm using the largest one, which is 3.5 by 6 inches. So I just created a card base that would fit that. So to start with, what I did was I stamped all my images on some Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I then used my Brother Scan and Cut to actually cut them out. And what I did was I added some post-it, which is that green stuff in the background. I added some post-it note to the back of it, and then sort of re-stuck them, for want of a better word. They're not stuck, but back into that so that I could share the colouring with you. I don't always do this because it does take a long time sometimes, but I know I love watching somebody colour in, so I thought this might be nice for you. And I'm using a variety of Zig Clean Colour Real Brush markers to colour in the images. Now I'm not very good at this. I just add some colour. I'm using the blender pen and just getting it on there. You could use a water brush, aqua marker, whatever they called, the thing I can never remember. And you could also use a paintbrush and water if you wanted to do it that way. The nice thing with the blender is it is just quick and easy, and it's right there on tap. What I will say is though, in between each colour, just make sure that you wipe off the tip so that you're not transferring that ink to somewhere else. Or if you were working with, I'm working with one sort of dark grey here, so that he looks like a black skunk, then if I want lighter areas, then I still need to wipe that marker tip off so that it doesn't drag just all of the dark into it, otherwise you don't get any shading. So this the other reason I'm also using mostly one marker per colour is also to show you that if you only have the 12 set of zigs, you can still create good shading, having one colour per colour set, if that makes any sense. So in other words, if you don't have a dark and a light of say a red, then, and you've only got one red, you can still create some nice shading with that one red colour. So I literally just picked a few colours to work with for this. I was trying to be clever here by not turning the paper. It doesn't work, so excuse me, am I trying to look like a professional? So I'm trying to get the bath done, and honestly this was so uncomfortable for me because I was trying to colour so that you guys could see it better, and I was at a weird angle, so I had to change it. So yeah, sorry about that. I find it easier to turn the paper as I'm working, so yeah, let's just work how it works best for you. I think that's the main thing. So just getting some of a light grey onto the bathtub so that it sort of looks either like an old cast iron sort of steel tub, or if you use a pale enough white, it could look kind of silvery, or it could look a pale enough grey, either silvery, or it could look like it's white, if that makes sense. So got the shower head, and then a pale blue for the water, I guess, the bubbles and the watery effect. The other thing I will say is just be aware that when you are colouring, I colour with my hand on the desk. So when, like, I've turned this round and I've got my hand essentially on the skunk in the bottom right, just be aware that if you're too much on it, it may smudge it. So maybe put a paper towel underneath your hand so you don't smudge all your hard work in colouring. And then just getting some colour onto the some green for the stem and some red for the rose. And then I've got some oranges and yellows for the little duck, because, you know, you've got to have a little ducky in the bath. And then I use 2 shades of pink for what will be the bath mat. So this is from Crazy Antics, and this is the picnic blanket. But I decided to use it as a bath mat. Just made sense for this little scene. And so I'm just colouring in each of these little blocks in sort of like a checker pattern as well, but in shades of pink. But again, if you only had the set of 12, you wouldn't have to do 2 shades of pink, because there might not be 2 shades there. You could do a red and a pink, or you could do just 2 contrasting colours. And then just using the blender pen to drag that colour out for each one. Then the last little bit is the little hearts that are sort of kind of like a little banner, I guess. And I started with one lightish sort of peachy colour pink and got those coloured in. And then the next colour that I went for, I feel like I either picked up the exact same colour or initially picked up the same colour and didn't like it. A different colour and didn't like it, so I just used the same colour. Well, it's back to front way of saying that, but anyway. So this is some, I think this is Stampin' Up! Cardstock, but it's just as normal cardstock, and I thought I wanted some shading on my windows. It kind of worked. I mean, I just added the pink and then just dragged it up for a bit of texture. The plain panel, I used the Happy Village to create a little village, like a little scene outside the window. I did that off camera just to save a bit of time, but I just stamped and coloured in the same way that I did the rest of it. So for the background, this is the slimline piece, and I'm just trying to work out where I actually want the floor to start and the wall to start. So I'm trying to get an idea of where I want that, and also to try and get it somewhat straight. So, I didn't need to do any of this, as it turns out. You'll see in a second, the stencil actually helped me decide that, because of where the stencil starts at the top there. So eventually I just went with that length that I have from where the pattern starts at the top, and just ended it where it ends at the bottom of the opening part of the stencil. And at the bottom, because I didn't want any of that, the colour that I'm going to use for the background, for like the walls, I didn't want that on the bottom section, because that's the flooring, which we'll get to in a minute. I decided to mask that off so that I wouldn't get any of the Blushing Bride ink onto what will be the floor in a bit. So some Blushing Bride Stampin' Up! Ink and a pink blender brush. It doesn't have to, the blender brush doesn't have to be pink. This is just the one I use for this sort of colour. And this is kind of like a peachy pink, I think. I don't know if my inks are just really old, but I feel like this is more of a peachy colour than the pink I imagine it to be, if that makes sense. I'm finding that a lot with some of my Stampin' Up! Inks. They're not the colours that I envisaged them to be. That's a big word for me. But anyway, so I just very, very quickly ran some ink, blended some ink over the through the stencil, and then because I didn't want such a harsh sort of line, you know, of the pattern, I'm taking some more of that Blushing Bride ink over the top of this, so that it sort of mutes it down, and it's almost like the background of the wallpaper, the main image on the wallpaper would be in a pink tone as well, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like a tone-on-tone wallpaper. That was the idea anyway. Right, so now I've got my wallpaper done. I'm going to use Smoky Slate for the bottom, what will be the floor. So I'm going to take that same piece of post-it tape so that I now don't get any flooring onto the wall, if that makes sense, and then just deciding where to line up the stencil for, I'm using the brick stencil, so it's kind of like a brick pattern on the floor, and just lining this up where I want it and then trying to get it to stick. It just would not stick to that post-it tape behind it, so I had to reline it up, but that's fine. It worked out fine in the end. And then just taking another blender brush and very lightly going over this to give a floor effect, like a tiled floor. And again, I didn't want it to be that harsh kind of line, so I went over it a bit more with some more ink. What I also should have done is added just a small strip of cardstock where the line between the wall and the floor start. Just give the illusion that there's like a little skirting board or something like that there. But I forgot, so it's okay. So now I'm going to start deciding where I'm going to put all these little pieces. Now there's a bit in here that I have left in, just to show that this is like my process, and sometimes I change my mind while I'm doing things. The first thing I wanted to do was work out where I needed to put my window, because that needs to go on first because it's in the background. So I started putting some of the elements together so that I could figure out the spacing for the window. So the first thing was to get the bubbles in the bath. I also could have actually stamped this all as one piece, to be fair, if I'd thought that far. But, you know, these things happen. But it's very easy to line them up and put them in there. So, very easy. And then I want my two little critters in the bath. I know. I couldn't help it. It's just where my brain was going. So I thought it was very cute. So I've got some tape at the back that's sort of holding them in place. And then I'm going to add some more to hold them in place even more. I'll add like glue and things eventually so that they stick properly, and they don't come apart. But just adding some tape at the back there, and then adding them into the bath. What I was also keen on is making sure that like their tails didn't sort of come too far down the bath itself, because otherwise it's going to look like they're not in the bath, if that makes sense. So it's just trying to place them as much as I could anyway, so they look like they're in there for the most part, which kind of worked. So at this point I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to put my little bath mat. This is where I want the bath. So the window's got to go like about there. So just lining up all the pieces, because there's 3 layers of cardstock there. So this is where the thing I did that I chose not to do in the end, this is why it didn't work. Because I forgot that there's 3 layers of cardstock here, and you'll see. So I've figured out where I wanted that, and then just popping the background piece, what would be like the outside world, put that one down, And then I am going to just layer up the other three. They layer up beautifully. They just line up perfectly. They're all the same size squares, so you just layer your outside image. I've done an outside scene, and then putting the curtains on, and then the frame of the window, which I just think is so sweet. I love it, and I love it in white. I think it just makes it look so cool. So getting that on there, and there's your cute little window. So then I decided that it would be a good idea to add my little rug bath mat down. So I got that one down there. And then I thought at this point it would be a nice idea to add foam dots to this. Yeah, bad idea. Oh, first I need to put the little shower head on. So I got that somewhat in place. Piece of the tape at the back held it in place for me, so that was nice. Handy. So, like I say, I decided foam dots were a good idea. They were not, because putting all these foam dots on meant that the whole image, bearing in mind that the window is 3 pieces of cardstock high, it didn't lie level. So if you wanted it to look like it was either level, or you wanted it to be more raised up, what I would do is add just chunks of cardstock, like pieces of cardstock behind the bottom half. So whatever of the image of your skunk and bath image is below the window, behind them add pieces of cardstock until you, like 3 layers of cardstock, so then the whole thing will lie level. I went ahead and stuck all this down, and then my bath mat, that's when I realized my bath mat did not look right, because it's like the bath mat was, I don't know, it really just didn't look right. So this is where I thought, okay, it doesn't lie flat properly. It doesn't look so bad on camera, but it really wasn't lying properly. But I carried on, and it was when I was trying to put these little pieces on the rug, I was like, this isn't lying right. Something doesn't feel right. So don't be afraid that when you've stuck something down to, peel it off and start again. Like, I didn't start again, but I peeled them off, and you'll see in a second. I'll go and sort that out in a minute. But what I was doing is finding place for the little rose and the little duck and the bubbles that have come out of the bath and landed on the bath mat. This is where I decided that I didn't want them on there, and I will actually take them off and just lay them flat. That's what I did in the end, because like I say, this bath mat did not look right. And that's what kept throwing me. I was like, this doesn't feel right. So that's what I would do going forward, is add some cardstock the same height as your window so that it lies the right level. Thankfully I could get this stuff off without damaging too much and get it back on there flat. So I stuck it flat. I just went with that. I didn't even do the cardstock thing that I've just told you about, because I didn't think about it at the time, because I was, too busy trying to sort out the foam dot issue. So I stuck it flat, much happier. My bath mat looks like a normal thing, and got all the other little bits stuck on to the bath mat. So before I stick this little heart banner, and it does look cute above the window, but that's not where I'll end up putting it. I grabbed the sentiment that I wanted to use, and sort of forgot how long the sentiment was, even though I knew that was the one I was going to use. But I will make it work. And in the end, I think it looks all right. It worked out okay. I managed to make it work for the size card. If I'd had a wider card or a normal A2 size card, that kind of thing, or a different orientation of the card, then yeah, it would have worked even better. But I think I made it work. That's how we roll. So I'm using some black ink. I'm using archival black ink, and I'm stamping this in the middle of a little, this is just a strip of cardstock. I have a whole bunch of them from when I cut cardstock up. I keep them. And so what I managed to do was actually get the card at the sentiment at an angle, where the sentiment, the wording on the sentiment will fit across there. So what I did was I added some foam, not on the section where the window is, but everywhere else along that sentiment strip, so that again it lies level with the window. So it's that note to self thing. By then I'd learnt. So lining it up where I needed it on there, and then adding the extra bits of foam so that I could get enough on there for it to stick. And then once it's stuck down, once I've actually got it pressed in place, I will then trim the edges of it so that it lines up with the edge of the card. Because this whole piece, this is about, I think it's 3.5 by 6 inches. This whole piece will line up. It will be the whole front of the card, which is a mini slimline. So just trimming the edges, and if you have big enough scissors, it works a treat. So I think the sentiment kind of looks, it's kind of like the banner's a little wide, but I think it still works. So I went with it. And then the little heart banner, I just was trying to decide where to put it, and I decided to put it in the top left corner just because it filled in that little bit of space, and it just fit in there perfectly, and it's just added decoration as well. So what I will do is I will add this to a card base that measures, the piece will be 6 by 7, scored at 3.5. And I hope you enjoyed this, guys. It was a lot of fun to do, but like I say, yeah, if I'd thought about things a bit better, it would have been even better. But I wanted to leave that in so you could see that, my little foam dot issue. And I hope it helps you guys. And I hope you've enjoyed this little card. I love this. I thought it was so cute. And I will see you in the next one, guys. Bye.